Overcoming Guilt, the art of allowing yourself to enjoy success. Do you ever feel like you don't deserve to fulfill your dreams? Join the Bucketlist Accountant himself, David Patterson, as he tackles the emotional burden that often accompanies our biggest aspirations. David shares heartfelt stories and insights about clients who battled guilt and learned to celebrate their wins. From the long-awaited purchase of a dream motorbike to finding work-life balance, discover how overcoming these internal struggles can lead to a more fulfilling life. Learn the importance of proactive communication and strategic planning to make your bucket list a guilt-free reality. I'm your host, Anthony Pearl. Let's get into making your bucket list happen. David, I think we need to talk about a subject that's been raised by people that have responded to the program in the past, and I'm sure you get it all the time, is this whole idea of guilt and people saying, I don't really deserve this. You're talking about bucket lists and achieving things, but you get there and go, do I really deserve it?
Yeah, look, it's a fairly massive emotional thing that people carry with them. And again, there's an element of I don't deserve this. And also there's an element in there of worrying about what other people are going to think. Because I think, and especially from a professional perspective, and probably our generation, the concept has been that you're working. You work from 16, 18, 20 through to retirement. And, you know, when people ask how you're doing, you say, oh, I'm flat out of work and all that kind of stuff. And people have a reluctance to enjoy and celebrate whatever wins that they have, and to be able to do it with a sports car or a holiday or whatever the case is. There's this massive guilt around I shouldn't be doing it. I should be paying off the mortgage. I should be saving for my kids to help them with a house. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And I had a client last year. He'd wanted to buy a motorbike for years, I don't know motorbikes, but he wanted to buy this really flash motorbike, and he didn't have a bucket list at that stage, but it had been something he'd wanted to do for 20 years. And when he said it to me last year, I said, well, why don't you do it? And he said, oh, I can't. It feels like it's an overindulgence. I've got the mortgage to pay. I've got the payments on my equipment in my business to pay. We've got kids still at school. And I just sat down and I had the conversation, and I said, well, is it really something that you want to have? And he said, I've wanted this motorbike since I was 20 years old. He was in his mid-40s at this point in time. And I said, well, business is going well. Cash flow is strong. I said, why don't you buy it? And he said, oh, no, I can't. It feels too selfish for me to buy it because it's something that's just for me. It's not for anyone else. And I just said then, like, he'd been working really, really hard in his business, built it from nothing. It was successful. I said, are you paying the mortgage? Yes. Are you paying all your bills? Are your kids, are they missing out on anything? No. I said, well, go and buy the motorbike. Don't worry about it. Just go and buy the motorbike. And about a month later, he sent me a picture. He was at the motorbike shop, standing beside the bike that he just purchased. And his face in the picture, the grin was from ear to ear, and he hasn't regretted it since he bought it. So I think being able to overcome that guilt, which I think just about all of us feel in these things, you think you're being selfish. You think all these things and come up with all these reasons why you shouldn't, but you should do it. You wait another 10 years to buy the motorbike, and suddenly, you might have a bit of arthritis, or you might not be able to ride the bike the way you wanted to, and suddenly you've got a regret. If you can do it, do it. And I think it's all about enjoying life and enjoying the journey to where you're going to end up. And I think those wins along the way are really, really important to what you're doing. Because you've got to have, the other thing that it does, I think, when you finally overcome that guilt of not deserving it, is I honestly think it helps free you up to be able to run and operate and move your business forward easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a really difficult thing, isn't it? Particularly as a parent, and particularly if it's, it might just be one of them that's in the business, and you tend to put everything towards the rest of the family.
Mhm.
And, you always take this idea that you enjoy them enjoying the little gifts and things that they can get along the way. But often it is, and maybe they don't know that you're sacrificing certain things along the way to be able to make that possible. And it is a very difficult thing to overcome that idea of, well, I probably don't really need it that much. And sometimes it's little things, right? It's not always a big bucket list item of something of like a motorbike. It might just be I really like a new suit or
Yep.
something like that. It can be little things, and you go, well, I don't really need the new suit. I can wait another year or two with the old suit. No one will care so much, and I'll rather get the kids X, Y, Z.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be a monetary thing. It can be a time thing. To give yourself time to learn to surf, or give yourself time to learn anything that is something that you want to do and takes you away from your family. I think that there can be an element of guilt in doing something that's no cost involved, but time involved. I think you've got to allow yourself the freedom to be able to do that, and knowing that it'll make you I think, if you've got your own things that you're doing off to the side, I think it helps to make you more present when you're with your family. And I think it makes you more involved because you've had your time. You do what you go off and you do your thing. It makes you feel good about yourself, and you come back in and you've got a really fresh attitude that doesn't have this element of begrudgement to say that. And I think we build it into ourselves a little bit, this self-sacrifice, which I think can be overplayed a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with indulging your own things that you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that they're difficult conversations, right? Because the motorbike example that you mentioned earlier is a good one in that the question is how does the rest of the family feel about it? It's all very well to say, listen, you're right, you deserve it, you've done all of these things, and you're an impartial judge. But what does the wife and kids say when you say, I'm going to go buy the motorbike?
Yeah. Well, in his case, and probably it's similar in a lot of cases, is that he'd built up the reluctance where the family hadn't. And especially the wife, his wife, when he broached the subject with her about buying this bike, well, she said, you've worked so hard over the past however many years, you deserve the reward. So go ahead, So it's interesting, that concept of, I think we internally build these things up and say we can't do it because of, we're taking away from the family or we're taking away from other elements. But I think at the end of the day, your family will understand that you need an outlet as well.
This podcast is brought to you by bucketlistaccounting.com.au. Speak to David Patterson and his team if you want to take better control of your life and business, helping small business owners like you be successful designing the life of your dreams. Go to bucketlistaccounting.com.au or check out the show notes for more information. Now back to the program. What I love about the approach that you take, David, is the bucket list accountant is that it's not only is it proactive, but it's almost like therapy a little bit along the way, isn't it? I mean, do you find that when you're working with families, I mean, that conversation would have been an interesting one to be a part of with the guy buying the motorbike, and to have heard what the actual, as you just gave us, what the conversations were that followed with the rest of the family. I've actually heard the opposite, where he didn't have the conversation with the rest of the family and did buy the bikes, I think it was plural, and cars, plural, didn't go down so well in the longer run. But I mean, you're playing part therapist, but it's communication as well is a key factor here, isn't it? I mean, I think that's everything that we've talked about and that you talk about, I should say, in regards to the bucket list. It's an ongoing conversation with yourself, with you as the person leading it, with the family, with the kids. You have to be active, proactive in having those conversations.
Absolutely, you do it. And the more proactive you can be in those conversations, the more, like, if your family knows what the things that you want to do and the things that your family want to do, then you almost start working together to help each other get there. And it doesn't become if you start talking earlier about wanting the motorbike, then everyone knows that that's the high priority for you. And then when the time comes when you can do it, they don't begrudge you that fact because it's been something that's been part of what you've wanted for however long it's been. But that communication, and particularly between me and the clients and their families, the communication between me and them becomes important because it allows me to understand what's important to them, and it allows me then to help them in the best possible way to grow their business, to help them achieve what they want to do. And it has a dual effect, because as they're doing what they want to do and achieving what they want to achieve, the sense of pride that I get by seeing that puts a bit of a perk in my step as well, and it gives me an added boost in energy to sort of go after my bucket list goals a bit harder as well.
And I love the fact that as an accountant, you get to make those priority or proactive, I should say, calls to say to people, you've been thinking about the bike, the house, the car, whatever it might be. You can do it now, as opposed to, oh, hi, I'm your friendly accountant, and by the way, you've got to pay some taxes. That's, it's completely flips it. And I can see how that drives to your purpose, something we've spoken about in a previous episode, and how the bucket list really drives a completely different way of thinking about how you have a relationship with your accountant.
It's completely different because the bulk of new clients that come in, the only relationship they've ever had is the accountant telling them how much tax they've got to pay. And it's all about tax, and no one likes that. But once you can get them into this concept, it's a lot more rewarding for everyone. You're working towards something, not trying to run away from something. So you're not trying to avoid tax or pay as little tax as you possibly can, which is still important, but you're actually working towards a goal that's much more important and much more enjoyable. And it becomes, for the clients, I hope, and for me, it's a much more rewarding experience. The relationship is much more rewarding than the traditional client accounting relationship.
It's much more enabling, isn't it? It's
much more enabling.
And very much being able to have those regular conversations with people, working them towards their goals and saying, look, you've kicked the bucket along a little bit further, and this is now getting close to being achievable to the point where you've got it, they've achieved it. And how cool is it that accountants getting photographs sent to them of people buying a new bike? And
absolutely.
It's not something that many would have that relationship with. But I think, to kind of wrap up this conversation, I think it's really that whole concept of the guilt and the not feeling that we deserve it. It's such a difficult idea to overcome. And I imagine that the continual conversations help overcome that to some extent. It's such an important thing to recognize it and to say you do actually deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an ongoing conversation, because there's a journey that they take from the first instance of having that feeling of not worthy or not having the freedom to be able to do these things. So it does take time to create the mindset that these things are allowable, and that it's almost getting to a point where you give them permission to spoil themselves. So it can take a little bit of time. And again, like anything, there's some ups and downs, but the continual message is that to understand what they're working towards, and that those goals that they're working towards are worthy, and that they're worthy of achieving them.
I think we should probably wrap this conversation by saying that the flip side is also important to recognize that you can feel that you deserve it, but you have to make sure that it's the right time to buy it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely you do. It's not you can't go gung-ho on it and just go willy-nilly and do it. It's certainly a process and a plan, and which will help you then achieve more of the goals. I think you've got to attack it in a structured way to get the most out of it, definitely.
The Bucketlist Accountant podcast is brought to you by David Patterson and his team at Bucketlist Accountant. Go and visit their website for more information, details, of course, in the show notes. I'm Anthony Pearl, your host from Podcast Done For You. We look forward to having your company in the next episode.